hope everyone is good. Are we ready to learn some funky lighting shit? Fair warning, the thing that I was trying to find something like old that I could use to teach it, but I ended up trying to like draw something new. There's no rendering on it at the moment, so we'll just have to go with that. But like I was gonna try to render it today, but then didn't have enough time, so whatever. It is what it is. I will just show you using the sketch and the flat colors. It'll still make sense. It just won't look as nice. It just won't look as like pretty. Okay. Let's switch to. Wait. Let me make sure that I've got everything set up fine. To close some things. Okay, so I was gonna render this, but then yeah, didn't have enough time because I woke up late since I was up at like 5:30 a.m. this morning scrolling around. But let me just for the moment, let me just merge everything. Merge visible to new layer, and I can group these and continue that later. But yeah, today is gonna be a lighting tutorial. So it'll just be like I'll go through this step-by-step process of the way that I personally do like the lighting that I use in majority of my pieces. Like I posted a tutorial about this like a couple months ago, but then I figured it would be maybe a bit more productive to actually like stream it, and then people can kind of like ask questions and like this or that. So yeah, I'll go through the step-by-step process, but if anyone does have any like questions, feel free to like type them in chat and I'll try my best to answer them. Once again, this is just like how I do lighting. It's not like a whatchamacallit, like it's not the be all or end all. This is just all of like how I do things and stuff. But I will teach you guys some like cool, I guess, tricks that you can do for if you're lazy like I am. So what I do is that I tend to create a color palette first. Since I was gonna like do a bunch of like different backgrounds, I can still do them. It won't like be very like environmentally blended since it's just a white background, but I can still show you some like different ways of doing lighting. But what I tend to do first is that I will create like a color palette depending on the kind of background that I am doing. Since we're just using a white background at the moment, we can say this is just kind of like an outdoor environment, I guess, like if you were just to think about like light surrounding the entire area. So typically what people tend to do is they will have a cooler kind of like shadow. So like let's say if we just pick like this grayish tone for our multiply layer, I'll explain that a little bit later, but let's just like do the palette. So cool shadows, warm lighting. So in this case I just select like an orangey kind of brown color, also more towards the grayer side. You don't want it to be too saturated. And then I choose 2 different screen colors as well. So this is for just like environmental blending later on. I use light blue and light purple. And then this is more of an optional, just like a personal choice, but I will also use a dark red and then a dark blue color for overlay. Okay, so now that we have our color palette, I'll explain like what I use each of these like on. So the first one right here, I'll circle it in like red. So this one right here, this is what I use for the multiply layer. So what multiply does in a technical sense, it will multiplies the color pixels and stuff. That's not really important. It makes things darker, put it that way. So if I were to just like clip this on here and use a multiply and select this on a normal layer, you can see how it just like blocks in all of like just like the one color and stuff. But if you change it to multiply, it's like everything is affecting what's underneath it based off of the color that you choose. So like right now it's just like a blue color, but if I were to use like the warm color instead, you can see like how that changes. So that's what multiply does. And then the second layer mode that I use is the add layer. So I'll create another one. Add is basically kind of like the opposite of multiply. It makes things lighter. So if I were to draw on top of this, it makes all of the pixels lighter based on the color that you chose. So if I were to do like a dark blue color, you can see that that affects that, so on and so forth. Now the third layer that I use is the screen layer. The screen layer is kind of like similar to the add layer, but not as harsh. So if I were to compare putting the add layer and then the screen layer, you can see there's like less of a kind of like a glow effect on it. So what I use the screen layer for, these two colors right here, so the light blue and the light purple. I just use an airbrush to like blend it into the environment some more. You can use like straight white as well. I just like to have a little bit of a tinge, but you can see that like if I just like airbrush it onto the ends of like Lucy's hair and stuff, it makes it seem like he's more blended into the environment. So that's what I do. Oh my god, it's the jingle dogs. So that's what I use Screen for, and that's what Screen does. And then the final one, which is kind of like optional, is overlay. So overlay, the best way that I can describe overlay is that it'll add like a color tone to your piece. So depending on what kind of color, it'll kind of like make it fit that color. So if I were to use like red all over it, then it makes it seem like the entire piece is kind of like washed in red, but you can still tell kind of like the colors underneath it. Same if I was to do blue. So what I do with these layers is that I will just like randomly airbrush like blue and red onto here, kind of like following the premise of like cool shadows and then warm light. I'll just kind of like haphazardly like airbrush it around depending on the kind of lighting, and then I'll reduce the opacity. So then it kind of just like gives it a little bit more different colors, more of like interesting colors to look at. So that's what all of the layers do separately, but how do we put it all together? So the first thing I do is that you'll grab the color that you're going to use for shading and just put it all over the piece so that it's completely covered. Make sure it's clipped to the bottom layer as well, so if it's not clipped, it'll just like go out of bounds and stuff. When you clip it to there, you're going to adjust the opacity and stuff. And then what you want to do next is that right in the top right hand corner, in your layers tab if you're using like Clip Studio Paint, but what you want to do is that you're going to want to create a layer mask. So it's this square over here with the circle in the middle. So you create a layer mask, and then this is what people call the light carving technique. So you can use like any brush that you want. I just use like my regular shading brush, but what a layer mask does is that, well, it puts a mask over the layer, so anything that's got like, if you erase on the layer mask, it'll erase like the what's like on the layer. It's a little bit hard to explain, but the best thing about it is that it's not like permanent as well, so you can just like paint it back over. So erased pixels are shown in the like with the like black color in there, and then you can use any other normal color to just like paint them back, so it's like not a permanent thing. But yeah, the way that the light carving technique works is that most often people will just like carve out where the light will be hitting. So say if the light was coming from like this corner up here, it's like if we put that there, move the palette down here. So say if there was like light coming from the top hand corner, then we can use that as a reference. This does require like some fundamental knowledge, but honestly, like honestly I just bullshit the shapes until they like look about right. So it's just about like kind of carving out where the light is going to be, and then you can kind of like put the colors like back depending on like how you see fit. It's like this entire part of Lucy's head would be shown in the light. You can kind of just like mess around with it a little bit. It's a little bit hard to see on darker colors, but like if I were to turn up the opacity a bit, it's a little bit more obvious. So you can just do like very basic shadows, and then kind of just like blend it out a little bit. Okay. Okay, so after that, there is also just like one more thing that is, it's kind of optional. You don't have to do it, but it does make the picture seem a bit more photorealistic. So sometimes if I feel like it, the next thing that I will do after like I've just done like a bit of light carving is that I'll create another layer on top of the multiply layer, switch that to overlay, grab the red color from the palette, and then crank the opacity down quite a bit, and then just kind of like either using an airbrush or like a hard brush, then like smudging it out. I'll kind of like outline the light sources right here on the clothes, but on the hair, mainly on the skin though. So you should be able to see like a faint kind of like red outline now. Yeah, I can blend it out a little bit more and then turn the opacity down. If I turn it on and off, you can kind of see it. It's very, very subtle, but what this is called is subsurface scattering. So say if you were to turn on your phone's flashlight and like hold it up to like your finger or something, it's the kind of like rim light that like scatters outwards from when like light is like hitting your skin and stuff. You can search it up, but yeah, it's just called subsurface scattering, and that's what makes things look a little bit more like photorealistic, so to speak. Okay, next part is the add part. So you're gonna grab the warm color, adjust the opacity, and this is where you'll just paint in where there's like hard light hitting. You can kind of like follow like the shape of the hair a bit. And blend it out how you like. I'm just doing like very basic at the moment. Here, for example, that would be affected by the light. You can also use the airbrush to add like softer shadows as well. You can blend those out a bit. Now, one thing that a lot of people will tend to make mistakes in if they're just starting out is that they'll just use like the airbrush for everything. So they'll use the airbrush to kind of like paint all of the shadows and stuff. Rule of thumb, don't do that. So what I like to think to myself, what I think to myself is that you can have hard shadows without soft shadows. So hard shadows is just if I were to shade directly like if I were to like directly shade like dark shadows onto here, that these are what we call like hard shadows, things that are directly affected by the light and stuff. So those would be hard shadows. Soft shadows are like if you were to just like the scattering of the light, kind of like the bounce light or something like that. But soft shadows are typically used from like airbrushes and stuff, so a lot of like beginner artists will just, because they're a little bit worried or scared to like commit, they'll just use the soft shadows for everything, and it just makes the piece seem like it doesn't look as good. But yeah, you can have hard shadows without soft shadows. That would be cell shading, but you can't have soft shadows without hard shadows. If you just look at like any kind of shadow, there will always be a part where like something is like completely blocked out of view from the light. But anyways, if we continue putting those on, so like we'll add a little bit of the add layer here. Use the airbrush to blend it in a little bit. So then the next layers are the screen layers. So I'm using the light blue and the purple. I already kind of did it a little bit with the add layer, but this just adds a tiny bit of like subtle color variation. So I will just like usually just airbrush it around like the outsides, kind of create a bit of like a vignette around here. Sometimes, also just directly picking from the background color. Again, this is just on a white background, but if you do have a piece that does have like a background in it, I would suggest you could just pick from the background colors and then adjust it to how you see fit, because obviously you're going to want to make the character blend into the environment. So what better way to make them blend into the environment by picking the colors from the environment itself. Just add a bit more of the shadows. Yeah, then you can see, like, just by adding this, a little bit of this screen layer, it's a bit more, it's more blended into the environment. And then last part, the overlay. Like I said, I just tend to gravitate towards using the red in the highlight areas and then blue in the shadow areas, but you can honestly just do whatever. I literally just randomly put the colors in depending on how quirky I feel, and then lowering the opacity. So like already, even with just like these like 4 to 5 simple steps in here, you can see if I were to turn all of these off and turn them all back on, you can see that even just without the shading and stuff, it does make quite a big difference. So that's the like, those are the main fundamentals and main like principles. Now if we want to go a little step further, what I'll do is that I'll add in some leaves at the moment. We're just using a brushes that I bought like online. But say if we were to have like foliage around the area and stuff. Oops. Say if we had foliage in here, obviously if there's going to be foliage over the character, then the shadows and the light would kind of reflect that. But there is a really, really easy way to kind of like bypass that. So if you have like all of these like layers already, I generally tend to do these like on top of the 4 primary layers that I already have. What I do is that I create another multiply layer, select the same shadow color, and then literally using the exact same brush, just put them on top. You can make them a little bit darker, depending. But if you just like use the brush that you use like for the leaves and stuff, it's very easy to put it's very easy to put just like shadows onto here. And then what I also like to do is I'll go into filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then just blur it a little bit. And just like that, it makes it look like he's underneath a tree. If you want to go a little bit further, you can also do the same with the add layer. Exact same color, exact same process. Put the leaves wherever you want, highlights, this and that. Turn down the opacity, and then blur the shit out of it. And look at that. On and off. It's so easy. Like I'm telling you, this shit's so easy. But yeah, if you have like any of these if you just like find leaf brushes or foliage brushes or anything like that, find them on the Clip Studio asset store or from wherever, then you can just absolutely just go to town with that. If there was like, okay, another thing that you can also do is that you can also add a glow layer. I tend to like doing this because I like quite harsh lighting, and the glow layer can also just determine a little bit kind of like the environment that you're in. So yeah, say if this was like an outdoor, like sunny kind of environment, you could use like the yellow glow layer to add some warmth into the drawing. And you can also do the same with like any leaves on here, and then that makes it blend into the environment as well. I've always hated doing lighting, but this actually makes it seem doable without taking a billion years. Exactly. Like this makes the trick that I just showed you just by using like the brushes that you have at your disposal. It can make things a lot faster. But yeah, you can airbrush on like whatever colors that you want. An outdoor setting, you can use that. You could use like, I don't know, if you want like cooler shadows, and turn down the opacity. Maybe if it was a cooler forest scenario, you can use that as well. Make use of layer modes, guys. Like, you don't have to like do everything just like straight up like by the books and stuff, like know absolutely everything. The layer modes are there to help you. They're there at your disposal, so make sure to use them. I took like about just like a day or two out of my life just to like read up on the layer modes and like experiment and like see what they all do. And it's very useful. It's useful knowledge to just have if you're a digital artist. So yeah, just use the functions that Clip Studio Paint gives you. You don't have to make yourself suffer. Queen never cry. But yeah, just by changing the colors of the lights surrounding the place, the character, can change where they might be in an environment. So yeah, there is that. What else can I teach? We can go through some like different scenarios, I guess, different kinds of lighting scenarios. So right now we're in like a sunny kind of environment, but what if we wanted to just turn that into like a nighttime environment? It's pretty easy. You can pretty much you could grab like darker colors. You can adjust the opacity some more, blend things out some more. So yeah, I'll just see if I can turn it into nighttime environment. Can change this to a cool lighting. It's just about kind of like having a bit of knowledge about the environment around you and then reflecting that onto the character. But if you understand the principles of like a multiply, add, screen, overlay, all that sort of stuff, and honestly you'll do absolutely fine. Let's change that to blue color. And just like that, it's like a darker environment now. And literally all I did was just change the colors around and then like add a couple more like shadows and lighting here and there, adjusting it with the layer mask. That's the good thing about layer masks, is that you can really just kind of you can paint without having to worry about like undoing and stuff, because you can just like paint the pixels back on. Yeah, just by changing a couple of colors, adding different lighting like here and there, even just based off of like a flat color background like that. You can see that the whole scenario has changed from before. Add the leaves back in as well. Now I'll show you something that I do with a lot of my pieces. So if you want to make things blend some more, first of all, merge everything to a new layer. Let me turn off that for now. Merge, visible to new layer. You can turn off that layer. So now everything is put together. Then we have the background, like the light here. If you want to make everything fit a little bit better, this works especially well if you have like foliage in the foreground. But what I would like to do is that I will just like blur kind of the edges that are affected by the light, because if you think about it, when you're like shining light directly, kind of like when light is kind of like shining directly at you, it obscures your vision a bit. So things that are like very harshly in the light, it's a lot harder to focus on. So what I do is that like I blur the edges that are most prominently affected by the light. It's like it'll be like the jacket here, just at the ends there, and then anything that's also kind of like behind the leaves as well. And then I'll do the exact same with the leaves. In photography, this is basically what we call like adding like a field of depth. So it would be as if you were like changing the aperture to like focus on like the character in the midground, and then having like the background blurred and stuff. So if we blur these areas right here, blur that. Then we can blur the leaves as well. You can see just by adding that little blur on there, how it adds a lot more depth into it. And then you can do all sorts of fun stuff. Lower aperture equal more depth of field. Yeah, exactly. You can add all sorts of fun things. I have a shit ton of like particle brushes and stuff just to make things easier on me. So you can add like particles all around whatever the hell you want. Blur it, do whatever. If you're extra like me, you can add in like actual like streaks of light. Do a little bit of that. So this is what I can like achieve just by like using multiply, add, screen, overlay, and glow layers. Because if we just like now, if I turn these off. Just turn all these. See, you can see just the difference that it makes. So that's without the lighting, and then this is with the lighting. And this is literally just like on an unrendered piece. It's really, really easy. Does anyone have any like other questions? Anything that you want to ask? Or like if you want me to show you how to maybe do like a specific lighting scenario, because there's a bunch of different lighting scenarios, like candlelit scenarios, spotlight, top down dramatic lighting, stuff like that. I didn't intend for this stream to be very long, but I at least wanted to show you guys a bit more on how you can use the different layer modes to do lighting in different scenarios and stuff. I'll try to think of some other things that I can show as well. Yeah, it's really just about taking into consideration the background, what kind of like scenario is in the background, and then how that reflects into the character. One word of advice I would give is that if you are going to like do a background and lighting and stuff, always draw the background first and plan it out in your minds what kind of scenario you're gonna have in the background. So if you're gonna have like a summer clear blue sky with like trees and stuff, draw that first and then apply the lighting based off of the background onto the character. It makes things a lot easier than if you were to do it the other way around. If you were to have like a neon cityscape, you draw that first, so then when you're doing the lighting on the character, it's a lot easier to think of how you're going to blend it into the background when the background is actually there. I think if no one has any like other questions, then honestly I could probably just like end the stream here. It's just like a short sweet little tutorial. It'll be better for you guys to like kind of put it into practice if you want to. Just remembering multiply, add, screen, and overlay. Those are the 4 primary things that you will need to know for doing lighting, if you want to do lighting like me. But yeah, with that being said, I think I'll just wrap it up here. Obviously, like all of my VODs will remain up, so if you do want to come back and look over this again, then feel free to do that. I don't know what streams that I'm going to do next week. Usually I stream if I like have something to like, if I like think of something useful to tell people, or just holding myself accountable to finish the shit that I say that I'm going to finish. But for any streams next week, it'll be on a stream schedule that I'll post on Twitter like tomorrow or something. Yeah. I think that's it, honestly. I'll just go and work on some other stuff now, but I hope for anyone that did join and listen to me talk bullshit about lighting and stuff, I hope that was helpful for you. Again, if you do have any questions, honestly, you can just you can send me a message on Twitter, or like tag me or something like that. I'm always happy to answer any lighting art related questions that people may have, because it is like kind of like scary looking at like pieces with like, oh, look at all these like amazing lighting and all that sort of stuff. But I hope that like being just like sitting here and kind of breaking it down a little bit just makes it seem a little less daunting to tackle. But yeah, it made it way less scary to think about. Thank you. Yay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, it's not scary to think about, especially when you realize that you have so many different things that you can use. It's just about kind of thinking about the most effective ways that you can utilize them. Because I remember I used to look at like my friends' artworks back in like 2019 or 2020, and they were like these amazing pieces with like amazing lighting and rendering and stuff, and I was just like, oh my god, how is she able to do that? And then looking at it just later on down into my quote-unquote art career, it's a lot more simple than what I initially thought, because I'm able to now break it down in my mind and see like, oh, these are like the kinds of like techniques that she used and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you guys. I hope that helped, and maybe I will see you again next week for probably more art streams. Don't know about gaming streams, but yeah. Thank you. I'll see you guys around. Bye bye.